Good morning, this is Nicole Ringgold. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a mushroom using only scrap and just a tiny bit of 16 gauge wire. This is one of those projects where you might find yourself making them all day long. To begin, you just need some scrap. I use a Little Smith oxygen propane torch. Heat your scrap until it buttons or balls up. I call these buttons. If you circle your torch around the edges after it has become a button, then you'll find that there might be a little bit of lift. I'll show you it again. The lift creates a concave structure on the bottom because there's an air bubble that gets caught underneath. So I'm folding it, turning it into a button, melting it down, circling. And then when it cools, you can turn it over and see if there's an air bubble, which I think is fun because it turns into more of a mushroom shape. This other one doesn't have an air bubble, so chances are probably about 50%. Now to create the stem of the mushroom, you can use some sheet like this that's a little bit longer, or you can pile wire into the general shape of what a stem might become. When using sheet, I heat the edges so that they draw inward. My goal is to create a thick enough mass that I can begin to roll. Be sure to change your torch angle every so often, not just focus straight down on the piece, because otherwise it might splay outward and glom onto your work platform. FYI, this particular platform is called Silquar, Silquar, and I find that it's a lot less dirty to work with. At this point, I'm going to use my torch to draw the ends inward. When you heat the silver until it becomes molten, it will follow the heat. And now I have a thick enough mass that I can begin to roll. I call it log rolling. Roll the silver so that I'm working on it on the top and on the bottom to bring it inward and to round it. At this point, I'm not heating the silver all the way through the bottom. I'm waiting for the surface to become molten, and then I'm using my torch to draw the silver, the surface silver, back and forth. Chris Anderson makes this pick from Lion Punch Forge. It's a titanium pick, and I'm using it both to manipulate the metal by turning it around. I'm also using it as a heat sink. As a heat sink, I put it at the end of the silver so that it does not ball and continue to draw inward. Now I'm going to use my tweezers to put the stem on top of the mushroom cap, and I'm going to fuse these together. No solder, no flux is required. Keep in mind that when you're fusing things together, they need to reach the exact same temperature at the exact same time. And as you're doing this, don't pinch too hard with your tweezers because you might smush together that portion of the stem that you're holding. Now I'm turning it over and I'm holding the cap with my tweezers, and I'm gently putting it on the work surface. I'm not placing too much pressure on that mushroom, heating the bottom until it slumps. Then the torch temperature that I've been using is hot, 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 so it's actually work hardening your metal. I'm going to add more propane so that I can anneal it. If you don't anneal, then your silver is going to be so work hardened that the next step is going to dull your bit or your burr, or whatever you're going to use on your flex shaft. Speaking of which, we're going to use a knife edge burr. This is a diamond cutting burr. They come in a number of sizes, so really it depends on the size of your cap. I think this one might be too big. Yeah, I think it's too big. So I'm going to switch over to a smaller diamond knife edge burr. I'm using this to create the gills on the bottom side of the cap. There are many questions that I receive about the whole annealing process. Some people believe that you can just lube up your burrs or your bits and that should be sufficient, and that's possibly the case. But I prefer to anneal my metal to make sure that the metal is soft, and then my bits and my burrs don't become blunt. Here I'm using a drill bit that's good for the size 16 gauge wire. Then I'll take some 16 gauge wire and create a lollipop top. I have a whole tutorial on how to make this particular chain. So you might want to refer back to that so that you have a much more in-depth, detailed tutorial on how to do these. But essentially, I'm going to fuse this lollipop top. I'm going to put it down on my work surface. First of all, I'm going to snip it so it's not so long. Then I'm going to put it down on my work surface, and I'm going to show you how to fuse it so that if you were to use solder, and then when you're inserting it into the mushroom, the solder won't reflow and open that connection. I like to fuse as much as I can so that I'm eliminating the number of solder joints involved in one piece. When you fuse this, you'll want to put your torch on the side of the lollipop that does not have the most vulnerable little tip, which is right here. So I'm going to put my torch on that side, and I'm going to use my pick right around 10 o'clock to nudge the loop to ensure that the piece is touching when I'm fusing it. And it's that fast. That's fused. Now I'm going to place my mushroom in the third hand. I'm going to flux the entire piece, and then I'm going to put the tiny lollipop top, or I guess you would just call it a bail, and stick it right into that spot that I drilled. And since this is the one and only solder joint in this tiny mushroom pendant, I can use easy solder. I'm going to use my pick to transfer the solder from the Silkar soldering platform to the piece. So to do so, you're going to heat the solder, not your pick. Make sure that your pick is clean. And if it takes too long, if you heat the surface, it's going to swipe across the surface. So just be sure to heat the solder. Try to pick it up nice and quick. Now I'm heating the entire mass, transferring the solder to the bail, not on the sheet, not on the mushroom. So it's on the bail. Now I'm going to use my pick as a heat sink to protect the bail, heating the mass to draw the solder from the bail down into the mushroom hole. After that, I pickle it, rinse that off, and then I like to heat the mushroom and apply liver of sulfur with a brush. That way I can leave the liver of sulfur at room temperature and it lasts for an entire week. Rinse that off, and then I use a sunburst radial disc. I like to use the white one, which is a more coarse/medium grit. And then I'm going to use this to polish off a good portion of that liver of sulfur. If you're interested in learning about how I fabricate more in-depth, detailed, botanical, nature-inspired pieces, I do have a Patreon channel. You can click the link in my bio, and it's $25 per month, and I provide new, again, very detailed tutorials on how to create botanicals. And I try to upload one new tutorial per month at the minimum. Thank you to Rio Grande for sponsoring my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to leave them below, and I do my best to respond to every single one. I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you for being here.